can you tell us a little bit about how you started digging into this topic and what you do with UnPlug? Actually, what's your work in this space,
Sure.
and with which
Yeah.
kind of companies also you work mostly?
Okay. So the whole premise of setting up UnPlug was to build essentially sustainable behavior change around how we use technology in a very positive way. That's really evolved into more now positive digital habits and what we now call digital culture. But initially, probably like yourself, Monica, you know, we kind of, if we looked at, and this was almost, we were being led by just society as far as where we saw the pain points. And I looked at children and I was like, okay, clearly there's a challenge here, because every friend I have that has children is just screaming at me saying, please help. What we also realized when we were working with the children was when we said, okay, what's the big challenge here? They were saying, well, when I come back from school, my parents are on technology, and there's that whole co-regulation concept. And obviously now working from home more than ever, that's a really hard thing to manage, and actually say, I'm on my computer, but this is work, when the child's thinking, oh, it just looks like you're playing Minecraft. So that kind of evolved then to focus purely on the corporate space. And I think initially we, you know, a lot of what we were doing was, because this was 2016, was really raising awareness. You know, I'd love to say that we definitely did some very positive interventions, but it was such a new space. It was really raising awareness as to, okay, guys, this is a challenge, and let's look at this from a very much a positive psychology point of view. So what's the output? What we're going to have improved focus, or improved attention management, improved sleep, and then moving on to some of the ancillary subjects like improved connection, as far as human connection, and improved empathy. And so we did try to, and we still do, have it very much solution orientated. But I think initially it was very much around keynotes, and then we've evolved into more kind of deeper interventions where we're doing half to full day workshops. And we're now moving into what we would call the space of digital culture, which is really how teams and organizations work collectively with technology, and then looking in today's realm, for example, the likes of communication charters, where for each team, they might have a different way of working with Zoom. So say, for example, for a general meeting, there might be a very simple guideline that people are allowed to check their phones whilst on the general meeting, or are allowed to have their camera off. If it's a team meeting, you have to have your camera on and you're not allowed to check your phone. And it's just having those simple guidelines, which is, it's almost like a bespoke version of what would be potentially the right to disconnect, which I think has come in some degree in Italy. And it's up for discussion here with Heather Humphreys and a number of different members of parliament. So we love the idea of the right to disconnect being discussed. I think it's something that we wouldn't necessarily support as far as one rule fits all, because it's quite an extreme. And I think what we found now that we're working from home is we love the flexibility, but more than anything, it's emphasized how we all have different work and life patterns, and we need to have our own flexibility. So I think, you know, what we've found in the last couple of months is there's more demand for what we do. So the majority of our clients are tech companies. Really surprising. Like, you know, the likes of HubSpot, Google, Salesforce, New Relic. And I think for a lot of them, they're like, okay, no, this is actually, we need to talk about this, which is really, really positive, because as soon as we stand up, we say, you know, we're all about managing technology, and all the language we use is about how can we work with this more effectively to make sure we're improving our well-being and our ability to focus and switch off. So I think if we were going in and, you know, I do have a part of my life that's very bells and smells and spiritual. If we were going in with tincture bells, actually look, I have a little Buddhist bell here, and just waving incense and saying unplug, they've run a mile. We don't do that. We, you know, a very small part of what we do does talk about taking time away from technology and unplugging, and whether you want to, within that space, have some sort of retreat or meditation, that's wonderful, because that will help to, you know, just change the way that the brain's working as far as muscle memory, to start to create a bit more space away from this wonderful habit we all have of task switching.
Yeah, exactly. And in your experience, what are the kind of issues and problems that corporates experience in the digital culture space, and how do they approach you in terms of delivering speeches or trainings or any kind of activities you provide?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big mix, Monica. Every company is different. I think we find more of a difference between company culture than country culture. Maybe that's regional, because we have done some work in Asia Pac where there are quite extreme differences from a country culture. But I think the majority of the demand we get is just people are struggling to focus. And, you know, we know that wherever we place our focus and attention, that's where we're successful. So especially in today's world, now that people are working from home, if people have really clear boundaries, if they're very disciplined, then they can maintain, you know, a good level of resources so that they can do a good job and fulfill their tasks and their role. But for the majority of us, we don't have that. You know, we're working in a house or an apartment where other people are also working. We might have animals, we might have children. We've got a lot more distractions that are harder to manage, such as deliveries and washing machines and neighbors. So that's something that has definitely increased in the last 6 months. I know there was a New Statesman article at the beginning of lockdown that said the Google search how to find focus had increased by 300%. We've definitely noticed it, you know, and I think then that leads to other areas, because depending on the organization and where they might be, if they're focused on, you know, if they have a mental health initiative, then they might see that's having an impact on people who are living on their own. So there's an element of loneliness. So we talk to them about connection and communication in remote working. For others, you know, well, I say others, this is a lot of people, not having that focus is then leading to a habit of distraction, which is causing massive issues with sleep. So there's other areas around being always on and having that focus. I think the area that we'll start to see, and I'm not sure if you're seeing this yet, is going to be around the right to disconnect, when it starts to come into legislation. And so a couple of companies here have adopted it prior to the legislation, just to ensure that they've got something ready, you know, almost being ahead of the game. But what that gives them is this wonderful opportunity to actually look at the way that their teams are working and say, well, look, how can we do this more effectively? Because we know working from home works. That's great. IT departments around the world have done a phenomenal job. But how can we make sure everyone's really getting the most from this? Because it wasn't just a switch. We didn't just go home and carry on working the same way. You know, we have to work out, how can we do this so that we're doing things like all the little small ancillary things that we take for granted, like the water cooler moments where we actually have really creative and innovative and very useful chats from a social point of view and a social connection point of view. You know, so how can we just structure the working day so that we're doing things like that? And so that even if we think of things like how we control our time and the concept of focus, historically in an office, you'd know when someone was busy because you'd look across and you might see them, you know, pile of work, you've got the headphones on. You can't tell if someone's busy if they're at home. And you might just, in the middle of a task, you might just send them a video call link and call them. And it might be that they've changed their day around and they're actually having a late lunch with their family. So technology is slowly adapting to that. So a lot of the likes of collaborative tools like Teams and Slack now have, I know Slack has some really cool out of office things as far as do not disturb. It has, I'm caring for a family member right now and things like that, which are, you know, we need to have that flexibility, because I think historically, if we think of just the way the office used to work, it was very much right, 9 to 5, this is you, you're working hard during those hours. And that's great. But now that we have this wonderful option to be flexible, and especially if we're at home, we need to have that flexibility. You know, if you live in a house with parents that you care for and you can't get the carer at the moment because of COVID restrictions or whatever it might be, you need to have that flexibility. And there are loads of cases similar to that. So the technology is adapting to that, but ideally it's having a digital culture strategy in place with the likes of communications charters.
Yeah. Okay, great. Where can people find out more about you and the work you do? I know you have a website and also you're on social media. So if you want to give any details on that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for this opportunity, Monica. I mean, the simplest thing is the website, because all our details are on there, including all our socials. It's unplughq.com.
Okay, great. So we'll keep in touch on that. Thank you.